Well, good evening. I'm Jared Eglinton. I am a financial advisor here at BECU, and it's my role through a refined process to help our members make good financial decisions. Thank you so much for being at today's workshop, 21st Century Retirement Strategies for Managing Retirement Income. Today we're going to discuss a topic that I consider to be very important regarding your retirement planning efforts. Aside from accumulating assets, the choices you make in determining your retirement income needs and withdrawal options are going to have a profound effect on your retirement lifestyle, and more importantly, whether or not your money will last as long as you do. I am going to go through this quicker than I usually do to save time, so we have a lot to cover in a short amount of time, and we'll have some time at the end for a few questions. So let's get started. Retirement looks a whole lot different than it did in the past, when people generally retired at 65, supported by company pension plans. But nowadays, the standard of living we'll enjoy likely won't depend as much on pension plans and Social Security, but how much we take advantage of tax-deferred savings options such as 401ks and IRAs. And we are going to need to be very efficient at how we're investing our money in these plans. And I would love to get a show of hands. How many of you in the audience have a traditional pension plan? Excellent. So we got a few. Not a ton, but I'm not surprised. Pension plans, excellent benefits. Unfortunately, pension plans have been going away for decades now. So a little bit about myself. I am a Seattle native. My parents have pensions. My dad worked for King County for 35 years and has the PERS plan, and my mom was an elementary school teacher in Seattle and Issaquah and is on the TERS plan. Both of them, they had one job for essentially their entire career, and that is not the reality for most people. My parents, with their pension and Social Security, they likely make as much or potentially more as what they made when they were working. But the reality is a lot of Americans change jobs more frequently than that, and we don't have pensions. Even if you work in those jobs, your pensions have changed drastically. So today, we have millions of Americans over 65 facing retirement challenges on their own. In fact, it's estimated that 54% of Americans at retirement age lack sufficient funds. And that's why many pre- and post-retirees are anxious about their future financial situation, and rightfully so. And I'm hoping that's why you're here tonight as well. So new retirement risks. Most of you know how important it is to save for retirement and accumulating money for retirement. That would probably be likely the biggest threat to retirement security, is not saving money. But many of you may not understand the risks to your retirement income that could affect you later in life. In fact, by creating a strategy that takes these risks into account, you can greatly improve your chances of reaching your retirement lifestyle goals. So 4 risks we're going to talk about. The first one being outliving your assets, Social Security uncertainty, corrosive effects of inflation, and rising eldercare costs. So, sorry, I'm missing a slide here. Bear with me a moment. There we go. All right, so the good news first. I use a tool that has very realistic mortality tables for us in the Northwest market. And the probability for men to live to 92 is very high. And we also use the assumption that women will live to 94. So actually for us, in our region, the life expectancy is higher than the national average. So that's the great news. We're enjoying our retirement longer. Our quality of life is better in retirement. And likely because we probably don't eat Spam every day, and hopefully we're not smoking 2 packs of cigarettes, and we switch from coffee to Sanka and back to coffee, and we switch from butter to margarine and back to butter. But whatever we're doing, it's working. So pat yourselves on the back. We're living longer than ever, and we're enjoying those retirement years longer than ever. The bad news is that we're living longer than ever. So the downside of living longer is the chance that we outlive our retirement income, and that reality is becoming more and more real. There's a term for this situation. It's called longevity risk, and I'm here to tell you today that longevity risk is the biggest threat to your financial plan. We have an example here, and we're going to use this. Let's say there's a couple. We'll call them Bob and Jane. They've saved $500,000 for retirement. They're both 65, and they plan to retire in the next month. And they're planning on withdrawing 8% of their nest egg in a portfolio that earns 6%. This sounds like a solid plan, but the reality is it has a serious flaw. If they are withdrawing 8% and earning 6%, the money is depleted after 15 years. And this longevity risk is also a large strain on traditional pension models. People are living longer than ever. When pensions were rolled out initially, you might collect benefits for 10 years. Now the reality is it could be 25, 30, 35, in some scenarios, maybe 40 years. And the same longevity risk creates a burden on the Social Security system. So I have a Social Security joke. You won't get it. I love this crowd. See, if you wanted the TED Talks, they're down the hall, but I'm doing stand-up tonight in this room. But in all seriousness, another factor shaping the future of Social Security is the uncertainty surrounding Social Security. And to give you an idea of why the system's under strain, we looked at a previous slide for longevity risk. People are living longer, but we have demographic risks that are a threat to Social Security as well. So today we have 3 workers for every beneficiary of Social Security. In 2037, that's going to drop to 2 workers for every beneficiary. In fact, it's estimated that at that time, there's only enough money in the Social Security trust to pay out 80% of benefits to folks who claim Social Security. So can this be fixed? It can. What does it look like? Maybe, unfortunately for younger workers, maybe they have to claim at a later year. Potentially, maybe Social Security taxes go up, or it would be nice if our government just merely funded it, Social Security more. It can be fixed, but the reality is it's reasonable to assume that there's problems, and we may potentially have to rely less on government income than initially anticipated. Inflation, we can't ignore inflation. Inflation is the silent killer of money. It's the carbon monoxide to money. But if you have $100,000 under your mattress, I hope nobody does, your purchasing power is slowly being eroded by inflation. In fact, $100,000 in 30 years will be $40,101. And this is something that we track in the United States. We use what's called the Consumer Price Index, and the government goes out and they track the cost of groceries and transportation and clothing and general living expenses. They go to Costco, hopefully not on a Saturday for their sake. Actually, they probably don't go to Costco, so that's not a fact. But they do go out and they survey prices of things. We do know that this has been a constant way of life in the United States for many decades, that inflation increases by roughly 2 to 3%. And this is particularly damaging to retirees on a fixed income. I do have some good news, though, that Social Security does have a cost of living adjustment. But for many of us, this is the only income we'll have in retirement that does have a cost of living adjustment. And I want to point out that I know that for those of you who raise your hands that have pensions, many people in the public sector, pensions have a wonderful cost of living adjustment. They're very good benefits. For people who have pensions in the private sector with corporations, more often than not, there is no cost of living adjustment, and inflation is very corrosive to your purchasing power over time. I also need to mention that we have our own brand of inflation in the Seattle area because our cost of living has increased very rapidly over the past few decades. So as we all know and can feel, if you are a renter, rents have increased. If you are a homeowner, your property taxes have increased. This is something I see a lot in my practice at BECU. Retirees, maybe they take a pension at $60,000. They live in a Queen Anne condo, and they are feeling the pinch of all of the expenses around them rising, but their income staying flat. So perhaps their condo dues have increased, their property taxes increase, groceries have increased, and they're feeling very priced out of Seattle. So this is something we can't ignore in our market. Eldercare, so this is a wild card. Let's turn our potential to another risk, and it's the risk that you could become disabled and require nursing or in-home care. So we are living longer than ever, which is a great thing, but the uncertainty around health and medical issues and their associated costs is a real concern for all of us and retirees as well. Not only are elder care needs very difficult to predict for any given individual, the sources of funding are equally unclear, but the bottom line is it's on our tab. I can tell you a little bit about my neighbor. I live on Capitol Hill. I'm one of those people who didn't make it far in life, literally. I live a half mile from where I was born, and I have a neighbor. Her name is Betty. She's probably 99 years old, and she has 13 sons and daughters, and they take a rotation, and they come, and every day there's a different one of her kids there, probably making a meal for her. Her daughter lives with her full time now, finally, but the point of why I'm telling you about Betty is many of us will never have that network of family and support system to take care of us. Betty enjoys independence. She lives in her home that she's lived in for 60 years because she has that vast family support group. But the reality is many of us will not have that, and we'll have to face hiring help for basic services like grocery shopping and transportation. I would imagine Betty probably needs help cooking and cleaning and maybe even dressing herself. So we talked about these risks, increased longevity, the future of Social Security, inflation, potential need for elder care, to name a few. The good news is there are strategies to manage these risks, and we're going to discuss those in the next section. Some of the strategies are conservative withdrawal rates, utilizing stocks for growth potential, utilizing 401ks and IRA for tax-deferred accumulation, long-term care insurance, and annuities as a potential way to create an income stream we can't outlive. So one of the biggest mistakes I see people make in retirement planning is being unrealistic about how much money they can withdraw from their nest egg each year. And this is something that I would tell you is something I see a lot, and it's a big takeaway, I would say, from if I could impress upon you one thing that I really would like you to be mindful of is that the fact that we can control our withdrawal rates, and if we have a conservative withdrawal rate, our money will last much longer. It's not much of a groundbreaking concept, but it is reality. In fact, if we look at this slide here, we've got our example with Bob and Jane, the $500,000 nest egg growing at 6%, withdrawing 8%, last 15 years. If the same portfolio earning 6%, we withdraw a 4% rate, it lasts 42 years. So this is something I see a lot, even with high earners and people who have accumulated assets. You can imagine a couple, they make $100,000 each, $200,000 a year. Maybe they've saved a very respectable $2 million. And I sit down with them and they want to continue living off of $200,000 a year. The fortunate reality is rough math tells us that $2 million will be exhausted after 10 years if you're drawing down $200,000 a year. However, if that $2 million, if we could get a conservative 4%, that's very reasonable, and you could live off of $80,000 a year, you're living off the interest of your nest egg and not even liquidating it, and your money's going to last a very long time. So something I would like to leave you with today is that consider if you're looking out longer term to your retirement, consider living on less, even if you're a high earner. It's going to be very important for your plan, and it's a variable that we can control. So stocks, let's talk about the stock market. The stock market is a powerful way to grow assets and outpace inflation. And it might make sense to maintain some exposure to stocks in your retirement. When I say some, we ideally want you to dial back the risk in your portfolio considerably the closer you get to retirement or in retirement. So I'd say 10, 20, 30% of stocks, but not all in stocks. You should be investing aggressively in your 20s, 30s, and 40s and dialing back your risk the closer you get to retirement. So long-term, the market, if we look at this slide, the top dark purple line, this is the S&P 500. It will reward us, and it will outpace inflation. This is an excellent way to grow your retirement assets. I want to say also that the stock market is a great place to be long-term, but a risky and scarier place to be short-term. And we can see this big dip here. That was the Great Recession of 2008. So this slide, that echoes the point where if we have a long time horizon, the market is very good to us. It will reward us. In fact, if we look back from 1926 to 2016, we have a holding period of 15 years. We're going to have positive returns 100% of the time. So the market will reward us long term. It's a scary place to be short term. Staying invested is key. So making emotional decisions, we know it does greater harm than good. I see more people in my practice who have not even high income earners, but amassed millions of dollars, just dollar cost averaging into the market. And I see a lot more people like that than I do day traders and people who try to time the market. So we know that making emotional decisions does not help us, and staying invested may be key. Shifting gears here, let's focus on 401ks for a moment. Can I get a show of hands of who has 401k plans in the audience? See, a lot more of you have 401k plans. I'm not surprised. They're the gold standard of modern retirement. Many years ago, they came out and they were this strange vehicle that helped Americans save for retirement, but they have become the standard for most of us. And the beautiful thing about 401k plans is every dollar we put into it offsets our taxable income. I always get a kick out of it in the UK. If you have a state pension, and anything else is a pension scheme, they refer to it. But in reality, these are great plans, and we have increasingly higher limits of how much we can sock away in these plans. Currently, $19,000 a year if you're over 50, and an additional $6,000 for a catch-up. But the great thing about 401k plans versus pensions is that they are portable and better for the American worker who moves jobs more frequently or maybe even has a few career changes in their life. So we also hope that your employer gives you a match, which is a beautiful thing. If you really want to break my heart, you won't contribute to your 401k plan, and you'll miss out on the match, and you'll be giving away free money to your employer, or you're foregoing free money. So that really makes me sad. Don't do that, please. Pension rollovers. So this is a strategy that might make sense. I want to say that most people who have government, state, municipal pensions, they're very, very good benefits with cost of living adjustments. You really want to have good professional advice on this strategy, but more often than not, we would never advise someone with those types of pensions to do anything but take income, because they're incredible benefits. If you have a private sector pension without a cost of living adjustment, it may make sense to investigate a rollover to an IRA where you can control the investments, potentially maybe you annuitize that money and get a cost of living adjustment, but it might make sense to shop that out. Sometimes I run into people too who they worked for a company a small amount of time and their pension is only a few $100s a month. That might make sense for you to roll to an IRA and control how you use those monies for either estate planning purposes or your own investment control. Long-term care insurance. So we talked a little bit about the possibility of becoming disabled and requiring nursing home care. We have a slide here. The bad news I have for you is our costs in Seattle are much, much higher. So it could be anywhere from $9,200 a month to $10,000 a month for a nursing home in the Seattle area. And for in-home care, $6,100 a month. There is a product, long-term care insurance, that will pay for these expenses. And I will say about long-term care is that in your younger years, 55 and plus, the premiums you lock into are much lower than if you wait to an older age, and then this insurance becomes quite expensive, unfortunately. But if you do lock in a good rate, it's probably less than you pay Xfinity, believe it or not, per month. And the benefits are substantial. You can imagine spending $120,000 a year on nursing home care, and that would exhaust your nest egg fairly quickly. Let's talk a bit about an overlooked strategy with annuities. So annuity is a product where we can go to an insurance company and transfer our longevity risk to the insurance company. And what I'm talking about is annuitizing your money. This product, it deserves a lot of scrutiny because unfortunately not all annuities are created equally, and the companies who provide them, but there's many good insurance companies that have long track records. They've been around 150, 175 years. They have very strong balance sheets, and these companies can provide you guaranteed income for life with a cost of living adjustment. And the interesting thing about annuities is that pension companies behind the scenes, a little secret is they're actually buying annuities on you, and that's one strategy they utilize to give you guaranteed income for life. But I'm not suggesting you go and annuitize all your money, but a portion of it to complement your Social Security is a very excellent strategy. So we've covered a lot here today. Before we conclude, let me summarize our discussion. We started by reviewing various challenges and risks of today's retirement, including those associated with longevity, inflation, Social Security, and eldercare needs. If there's one thing I hope you leave here with today is that you realize your retirement could last a very long time, in fact, longer than you think. And that realization is a big step and an important one because it can serve as the catalyst to being proactive about your pre- and post-retirement planning efforts. Retirement's changed a lot for many Americans, but now we're more empowered to do it on our terms with more tools in our toolbox, and we're living longer to enjoy it. So I think we have some time left for questions. Please.
We have about 5 minutes, so we can take just a couple of questions, but we'll get through what we can.
What's your thought about traditional IRA versus Roth IRA?
Yes.
And converting traditional to Roth?
Sorry, say the last part of that again. Good.
What is your opinion about converting a traditional IRA to Roth IRA?
Yes, it's a great strategy if you can take the tax hit in that year. So any amount you convert, you're going to pay taxes on in the year of conversion. If you have a long time frame for that money to grow in a Roth, and you can benefit from taking tax-free withdrawals later, it's a good strategy. If you don't have a long time frame, I don't like that strategy as much necessarily. And also, I'd say always be careful because it's going to give you a good tax bill in the year you do it. So.
But my strategy or my thought on this is, suppose you had to withdraw some money from a traditional IRA.
Yes.
Instead of withdrawing directly, put it in a Roth IRA and then use it, withdraw from there. It will be growing tax deferred because you'll be paying the taxes on it whenever you withdraw anyway. So withdraw it a little time before when you know that you'll be needing this much money in the next 1 year. Take it out from traditional, put it in Roth, and take it out from Roth. There'll be tax deferred growth for it.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. You're absolutely right. If you feel that in that given year you have the extra money to pay the tax penalty, that's going to serve you well to do the strategy you just mentioned. That's really the only downside I can see of it. So you're going to have a tax bill every year, but you're absolutely right. You're not going to have to take required minimum distributions on that money, and it's going to grow in a Roth, and you won't have to pay taxes in the future. I caution on that one, though, if you are going to be in a lower tax bracket in the future, to make sure that that makes sense. So some people, when they're working, they're in a higher tax bracket, they're paying taxes on that money at a higher rate, and they can later after they retire in a lower tax bracket, be careful of that trap as well.
Any final questions?
Speaking of RMD, is there ways or options to minimize that?
There is. I think one thing, a strategy I like, if you're healthy, we talked about longevity risk. I would say that it makes sense for many people to postpone taking Social Security if you're healthy and to 70. You'll get 34% more income guaranteed for life with a cost of living adjustment. If in those earlier years of retirement, assuming you retire then, or let's say 65, and you spend down your IRA or your 401ks, that's going to reduce the amount you have to take in RMDs. So there's a good tax strategy regarding RMDs. Another one I think a lot of people don't know about too is that if you're working still, if you're working into your 70s, you can have a 401k plan at your employer potentially and roll all your retirements into that plan. And then you don't have to take RMDs from the company plan you're working at that time. So there's a couple strategies there. Any other questions? I think we're out of. We could do one more. We have time for one more question. I'm sorry, we're short on time.
What's a good way to find if an annuity is good for you? You know that it would be secure.
I would say look for the biggest insurance companies with the highest credit ratings. Those are, if you're going to trust the company to pay you income for life, that's important. They're going to be big companies you recognize and know. But I'd say, for all of you today, come and talk to us. We want to continue the conversation. Use advisors and people you trust. Be leery, I would say, of the vanilla insurance salesmen out there who really maybe not, they don't have the right credentials for financial planning. So I think that would be my answer to that question. But please, thank you so much for your time. Like I say, we'd love to talk to you. Make an appointment with us. We'd love to continue the dialogue. We appreciate you being here. If you would please take the time to complete our brief survey, we'd appreciate it. But thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jared. Thank you so much. Once again, our financial planning services at BECU are free. Feel free to call, continue the conversation, have excellent financial planning conversations with us. We are interested in your financial health. Thank you for filling out the survey, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.